How's everyone doing? This is Noah with the Life of the Zigs coming back at you with another video on how to install recessed lights on your ceiling without attic access. So let's get started. So to start off, I want to show you the light I used. I used a Halo ultra thin down light. I call them wafer lights. Super easy to install. It requires a 6-inch hole. You make the cut, have your wiring up there, you toss your box up in there, and it just slaps up in there and holds itself in place with those fins. They're a little over 1,000 lumens and 14 watts a piece. And the nice thing about these lights is you can change the Kelvin of it, so you can have it at a 2700 Kelvin all the way up to 6000 Kelvin, which is either, warm white or cool white. Looking at the light itself, they're very thin and it's super easy to install. The box separates from the light and it has the selector there for the color you want. With that, guys, let's get to installing it. For cutting the holes, I used the Milwaukee adjustable hole cutter. This worked okay. Actually later on switched to something else, which I'll show you later. I was just cutting on 1/2-inch thick drywall with that popcorn ceiling. However, it still didn't do the best making the hole. It kind of struggled to get a good cut. It did work, but it did end up roughing the edges. As you can see there, it didn't cut fully through. One thing you always want to make sure to do too after your first cut is stick your light up in there and make sure the hole is the right size, just to make sure that nothing got moved or anything, which as you can see, it fit up there nice and snug, so it was a good size. One thing I want to point out that's really nice with these lights is that they will fit under a beam with 1/2-inch thick drywall. So I am basically straddling the light in between the beam and it'll slide right up in there and in it. And as you can see, I have a bunch of plumbing right above there. None of that's going to be in the way with this light. It's so thin that it just is the same size as the drywall, and those fins stick up there and keep it in there nice and snug. So that's another reason why I like these lights. Continuing on with cutting the holes, I had 3 more to cut in the kitchen here, which, just so you guys know, I pre-mapped out where I wanted to put all these lights weeks in advance. I recommend doing that because you can kind of see over the course of a couple weeks if you're going to like that location and really think about it. And the nice thing is it's just pencil on your ceiling, so if you decide you don't like it, you can just paint over it or erase it. As I stated before, I was not too impressed with this hole cutter. I did have to pull the vacuum out as some dust was leaking through, and as you can see, it kept trying to hop and skip on me. And as you can see, basically every hole I made, I had to take my screwdriver to it to pop the rest of the drywall out. The next step here was removing the old kitchen light. This was fairly simple. I just had 4 screws to drop it, and then I needed to drop the mount that was on the actual ceiling as well. The reason we were removing this now is we needed to use the wiring in it to hook to the recessed lights, because we were going to use that wire and connect it directly to the first recessed light in the series, so we could just use the switch and not have to run any wire down to the switch box or anything like that. While my dad was working on that, I ran the first fish through the joists to connect those 2 lights together. I just used my fiberglass fish to fish it through and then hook the wire to it and pull that through. Then I just repeated the same process on the other side here. Again, you can do this because your joists are running with the wire, so there's nothing blocking it, or at least there should not be anything blocking it. And then just remember, once the wire's pulled through, to cut any excess off and put some bends in it so it doesn't slide back out. Now it was time to start drilling through the joists to run the wire across to the other set of light. When doing this, make sure you have a flexible 1/2-inch drill bit. They make it, I believe, in 3/4 inch or even a 1/4 inch size. 1/2 inch is the best size to get 1 to 2 wires through the hole. Also make sure you have your fiberglass rods. We also did have to drill a hole right in the middle in between the 2 lights, as we weren't going to be able to make that long of a stretch with the drill bit to get the wire through. So we will have to patch that up later. However, patch is already going to need to be made, so it's not that big of a deal. Another thing to remember here too when doing this, when you're drilling blind, you need to make sure you kind of know what's above you. Obviously, I knew there was a bunch of plumbing above me, so again, that's why we made the hole right in the middle, so that we weren't going to accidentally hit anything. And one more tool I highly recommend when doing this is having a little tiny fish camera. As you can see in my hand right there, that's what I have. That really helps in seeing what's through that hole you just made and just double checking and make sure you're not going to run into anything. So I would definitely purchase one of those. They're on Amazon for like 30-40 bucks. It's not that expensive. Once we had those holes drilled through that side, I had one more hole to drill on the far side right there, which I used my right angle drill to do. You don't need to use a right angle drill to do this, however it just worked the best. And then once we had that done, we took our fiberglass fish and fished it through while also using that camera to help locate that fish, and then using the hook attachment provided on the camera, hook the fish and pull it the rest of the way through. Once that wire was all ran, it's time to start installing these lights. There was only one wire through this hole because this was the last one in the series. These boxes are able to accept up to 3 14-2 wires. I would only recommend putting no more than 2 in because it does get jam-packed in there. That is why my wire is so short there. I know some of you are going to hate on me for that. However, you easily have excess if you ever need it, as this box just sits up there on the ceiling and it isn't mounted to anything. Once you have your wire in the box and it's all closed up and set to the right color you want, you just use the plug and play connector, plug it in, twist it shut. After that, you slap the light up in there with the fins. You slide one fin in there, push the other fin up, and then it kind of just sucks itself in, and then you can adjust it around if you want. And then once you adjust it around and get it to where you want it to sit, you're all done. We still had one more wire to run from the light in the far corner all the way across to this other corner, which again, I'm going to put it up right here of exactly where the wires ran just so you guys understand what we had to do. I will say the most difficult part of this whole project is fishing the wire through these holes. It tends to get stuck on some things and the holes are not perfectly in line, so it needs to bend around, which can make it a pain. Now that all those wires were ran, I just had to put up one more light, and then once I had that light put up and completed, it was time to test out the work we just did and turn on the light. Real quick guys, I just want to show you the other method I used to cut these holes. I used a 6-inch hole saw made by Spyder with the Blue Mole drywall catcher bowl attachment they have. This worked, I think, in my opinion, better cutting through the drywall, but it could have just been that my blades weren't as sharp for the Milwaukee kit I had. With that being said, guys, we also did the living room and the dining room. So basically the whole first floor we put in recessed lights. It was 12 recessed lights in total, 4 in each room. I really think it brightened up the area and made the area a lot better. One thing I do want to say, in the living room, we had to move the fan over a couple inches, so that's why there's a big hole right there. And we also had to put a junction box above where the light was going to be for the switch by the door, and this was because we had a bunch of different wires coming in for the lights, the fan, and power for it all. So again, that is allowed because that light easily pops out. It's almost like an access panel, so that's why there's a junction box above there. When it came for a time frame for this project, we started it at about 7:30 in the morning. It did not get finished till about 9 o'clock at night. It was definitely a long day. However, it was definitely worth it to all get it done in a day and get it all cleaned up in a day so that you could just enjoy it more and not have to worry about it the next day. When it came to costs of this project, for what it is and what it provides, it's relatively cheap. You can get a 6-pack of the lights that I got for roughly $150 in Lowe's or Home Depot or on Amazon, and you can get 250 feet of 14-2 Romex wire for about 80 bucks. So you're looking at less than $500 to do all this. Yes, you may need some switches, which we did not need necessarily because we tapped into existing switches because we were removing some old light. However, for less than 500 bucks, you can basically light a whole floor, which in my opinion is definitely worth it. With that being said, guys, this video is coming to an end. I hope you learned a lot as I did throughout this process. Please leave comments letting me know what I could have done better or something that could have made it easier for myself. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Have a good day.